believe that women everywhere can be and are agents of change, drivers of progress, makers of peace. All we need is a fighting chance to show what we can do in every part.
And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters."
Earlier this year, The Economist magazine published what they called a glass ceiling index.
God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so.
And inside the ring of mussels was a lake. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm already underwater.
No country can truly thrive by denying the contributions of half its people. The great unfinished business of the 21st century is helping women and girls break through these ceilings and
with an eye on a longer horizon than the arc of our own political careers.
ripple across the entire society.
We went out over the water in this lake and tried to descend in it and bounced off. It was so super saline and dense that the submarine couldn't go down in it. We literally bounced off, and as we bounced off, we sent ripples heading back to the shoreline. It was insane. I've never seen anything like it.
But he said, "There is nothing endowed with life for a man who is enslaving the elements to the nimblest creature in all this world that does not sway in its turn. Whenever action is born from force, no matter how small it is, the cosmic balance is upset, and the universal motion resorts."
If we, the women of the United States, act decisively, we can make a real difference, not only far from home, but here at home. That's why we are launching No Ceilings. We want to know.
And what they saw scared them a great deal. How do we know they were extremely concerned about the sky? Because the US and Russia immediately started firing nuclear weapons straight up, and they kept firing for the next 4 years.
What we've achieved and what we have to do. I'm absolutely confident that we can send a clear, unmistakable message.
And 2 seaplane groups, the eastern to map that half of the continental shoreline, and the western to map the opposite coast of Antarctica.
Onward to the edge, we're moving onward to the edge.
Ceilings in America are unacceptable. Ceilings around the world that prevent education and health care and jobs and opportunity are equally unacceptable. And we're going to be about the business of making sure that those ceilings crack for every girl and every woman here and around the globe. So let's get cracking!
Led by the University of Colorado Boulder has discovered an invisible Star Trek-style shield that blocks so-called killer electrons 7,200 miles above Earth.
But more broadly, we've got to move beyond partisan politics on this issue.
I'm telling you, our whole way of life as we know it is in jeopardy.
I appreciate that information.
But I have the documented evidence. It's all in there. Show him.
Well, he's got these magazines here. Conspiracy Review, Suppressed Truth Roundup.
The whole master plan is exposed.
Yeah, well,
You're still not convinced, huh? Would you like to hear the names of just a few of the people who have been on the Trilateral Commission?
not particularly.
James Earl Carter. Heard of him?
Look, Mr. Klein.
Henry Kissinger. You heard of him? Walter Mondale.
Who? Mr. Klein, this is
John Anderson, George Bush. Now, you remember at the convention, everybody thought it was going to be Ford for Veep. You know what happened? David Rockefeller just picked up a phone, put in a call. Hey, Ronnie, forget Jerry, it's George. Bye. So, no matter who won in November, they had their man in the White House.
Are you through?
I want to be clear. I am willing to work with anybody. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, Greens, anybody to combat this threat on behalf of our kids. I'm open to all sorts of new ideas, maybe better ideas, to make sure that we deal with climate change in a way that promotes jobs and growth. Nobody has a monopoly on what is a very hard problem, but I don't have much patience for anyone who denies that this challenge is real. We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. That's what the American people expect. That's what they deserve. And someday our children and our children's children will look at us in the eye and they'll ask us, did we do all that we could when we had the chance to deal with this problem and leave them a cleaner, safer, more stable world? And I want to be able to say,
I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. You know something? They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
yes, we did. Don't you want that? Americans are not a people who look backwards. We're a people who look forward. We're not a people who fear what the future holds. We shape it. We shape it. We shape it.
And took hold. The religions adapted to handle the new reality, and life moved on. More importantly, the globe model was quickly introduced into the education systems. Over the next 500 years, the challenges to this model faded, to the point where the globe was accepted as universally as physical laws such as gravity.
Gravity is not a real force at all. Objects just free fall towards the greatest energy because it has the greatest time dilation, or the slowest rate the time flow.
A globe and some UNICEF artwork.
Well, they're in on it too.
Okay, Mr. Klein, if you
Read that again if you didn't absorb it. For 20 generations, people believed that the earth was round.
Broaden the circle of those who are willing to stand up for our future. Convince those in power to reduce our carbon pollution. Push your own communities to adopt smarter practices. Invest, divest. Remind folks there's no contradiction between a sound environment and strong economic growth. And remind everyone who represents you at every level of government that sheltering future generations against the ravages of climate change is a prerequisite for your vote. Make yourself heard on this issue. I understand the politics will be tough. The challenge we must accept will not reward us with a clear moment of victory. There's no gathering army to defeat. There's no peace treaty to sign.
In 1959, only a year into the atmosphere bombardment, 10 nations, including the United States, made Antarctica off-limits to any colonization. A treaty was put in place and to this day remains intact. Over 50 nations now have signed off on this treaty.
When President Kennedy said we'd go to the moon within the decade, we knew we'd build a spaceship and we'd meet the goal.
I want to talk about our common responsibilities in the face of a common danger. The events of recent weeks may have helped to illuminate that challenge for some, but the dimensions of its threat have loomed large on the horizon for many years. Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity.
That image in the photograph, that bright blue ball, that bright blue ball, that bright blue ball, that bright blue ball.
Because there was a globe in every classroom they sat in. There was no proof. Hundreds of years went by, and still civilization had no way of proving the theory. Planes were invented around 1900, but until 1957, nothing could go high enough to give a true perspective of where we lived. And that's when everything got strange. The United States and Russia both sent up rockets high enough to take decent pictures.
We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and
Tesla was more than just a great electrical engineer, and at the age of 81 he stated that he had completed a dynamic theory of gravity. Sadly, this theory was never published.
Unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
A few things to keep in mind here. First, this was now 1958. Nuclear weapons were very expensive and hard to come by. These also weren't those nominal yield 20 kiloton toys we used on Hiroshima. This was high kiloton to low megaton, and we couldn't get them up fast enough. And the strangeness continued in other places.
Play in the universe. It says that consciousness or mind or the activity going on inside of us is playing a role. It says there's a secret underground that seems to be affecting the reality we live in, and this reality we live in is not at all what it appears to be.
What is the quantum physics specifically? Is it entanglement? What is exactly the quantum that makes that connection?
The major basic idea that quantum physics implies, which makes us understand this or even think about this new paradigm, the thing which is that there's this underground, there's got to be a realm of existence which cannot be ever touched on or seen, which bubbles into the existence giving rise to our understanding of the world. In other words, we ourselves, the nature of our I-ness, our beingness, comes from this kind of realm, and quantum physics seems to be pointing us in that direction. The physics before that said there's an objective reality out there, Matilda, and don't mess with it, because if you do, something bad's going to happen to you. But the new realm says not only can you mess with it, you've been born to mess with it. That's what this is all about. We're here to involve and get involved with it and to interact with it, and we can be creative with it.
How does quantum physics say that we were to get involved in it?
Well, it implies that without us, the world will be a very blurry, gooey place. Because what science has been telling us now is that the world is fundamentally probabilities, waves of possibilities, gooey stuff, which doesn't have any spiky, thorny objects, reality, no stones, not even unturned, no stones, period. Nothing comes into being unless there's an observer somehow involved in the equation. And quantum physics points to that. It says, when you observe, things happen. When you don't, they don't.
This is exactly the process that is explained in a new theory called quantum atom theory. In this theory, Newton's apple does not fall to the ground because of the downward force of gravity, but because of the upward momentum of electromagnetic radiation or light. Gravity is not a real force at all. It is a secondary force to the electromagnetic force. Objects just freefall towards the greatest energy because it has the slowest rate of time, or the greatest time dilation.
There is only one untouched reservoir of raw materials left in the world, and that's in the region known as Antarctica, an area larger than the combined area of the United States and Europe. The American government is sending a naval expedition to that region. The purpose is to train our Navy in polar operations so that it may better perform its function of preserving the peace upon the 7 seas of the world. Beyond that, the American government is seeking to do its share in the discovery and the release to the world of the unknown treasures of Antarctica in the interests of all mankind.